doing a second stream of the day. And in this part, I'll be adding a user requested feature now. What that feature was a simple ability to be able to see what the current targets. And what that means is, let me just play the project and see what it does. So currently, if we place down the tower and we start the wave, the tower will attack. We do have an option to select whenever we want to hit the closest, furthest target and whatnot, but we don't actually see what is being targeted, even though we do have an option to click and get that display circle as we have in here. Like under the, oh, interesting. Shouldn't an enemy have a display circle as well? It's interesting because I'm pretty sure. Do enemies not have the selection? Image selection, what do we have here? That's the image here. Oh, the highlight circle. Why is it not visible though? Okay, either way, we want to get that highlight to appear. So that's what we're going to be doing today, is get the highlight underneath the enemy show up. So let's start off by going into our, so first, if we select the tower, that gets recorded in our player input. So let's open up our player input script. Now, our player input, let's just go and click, stores the input of currently selected tower. And how does that happen? Well, let's go into our game manager. In here, we have these three objects. And when we click on a tower, a selected object gets highlighted. So what we essentially have to do is get the target of the selected object. So if we start the game and just pause it right about now, we can click on the tower and we can see that our tower has a target, right? So let's create, so we already have a range display here, which is a little circle like this. So let's duplicate this circle and let's change. Actually, let's find our little, because we want to change the color of just this circle without changing the color of the other. Can I change the color of just this circle? What do we have here? Actually, let's create a new highlight and quickly go into GIMP and just change the color for the sake of this, so I don't have to play around with materials. And this is going to be the enemy selection display, I guess. And we'll just put the enemy selection highlight. Where are we? And we're just going to replace it with this one. There we go. Now that we are here, let's just quickly open the GIMP. I think everything's loaded by now. Show and Explorer. Is it in here? Yep. Now let me drag in the enemy selection. And I'm just going to change that to a different color. Our enemies are yellow, red. What color would make sense? I guess let's just make it, no, because the path is gray. You know what? Let's just leave it as red. It should still stand out enough. Okay, so now we have our highlight, and I'm just going to export it as straight back into the same folder which it came from. Yep, replace, export, and now we can just get rid of that. No, nope, don't need it. Okay. Of course, the original range should have this one. Wait, why is it two different materials? So I do have to. Where is the highlight material? Oh, material. Okay. Slight change of plans. Where is this? Okay, whatever. Doesn't matter. Let's just create a new material. Actually, what type of a material is this? It's a standard shader. Okay, with a transparency. So let's create a material, which is going to call it the red highlight. And with this, I will drag in the red sprite. And never mind. Where are we? Okay, this. Hide this. Go into our material, red highlight, red highlight. Where would it be? Oh, come on, I just called it something. Where is the material? What? There we go. Okay, with this done, let's now play around with our red highlight. We first apply the circle and change it to transparent. There we go, like so. And let's compare the two, see the difference between them. So I presume I have to disable these. Yep. Okay. I am streaming. Good. It wouldn't be good if I wasn't live. Okay, with this done. Wait. 1 second. There you go. Now everything's fine. Now with this done, let's add this to our code. So we don't need any of that code. We don't need any of that code. But we do need this one. So our player interaction. So the same way we have our display circle, we will add in we will essentially just copy all of this code. I think that would be the quickest way to do it. And then after current, now, of course, we want to change the name. So this is the enemy selected by the tower. I guess that would be the best way to call it. And of course, in disable docs, we have to call this as inactive. So where is it? Let's go back. It was higher. So we will have our doc set active, and it's going to be set to false. The reason why we're setting it to false here is because a disable docs gets called when we deactivate the selection of something of the tower. So before we do that, we want to disable this little panel. And of course, let's do the next function, which is, well, let's drag it real quick into the inspector. Where is it? Player interaction at the very bottom right here. Now that we have this and we click on it, so now when we click on the tower, we have to keep track if the tower has a target or not. So if our selected tower will get a target, we have to enable that circle on that target. So what we do is we check for, let's check which object it is again. So now we have a target. And what we're looking for in the game manager is for the selected object. So selected object is for this. So let's make a new function, private void check for selected enemy, I guess we can call it. So what this will do is checks if a tower currently has a target. So what we'll do is if our selected object and then .get component and we'll get a tower, .target is not null. So at this point we want to do two things. Well, we want to have an if and else. If it's an else, we will do the same thing as we have in the Sable highlights, which is we will set this to false, but otherwise we will set it to true. I cut out the, there we go. But what we also want to do is we want to make it follow the enemy. So we will, well, actually let's do first, not to call this twice. So let's just do a tower. The selected tower, and then we're going to be doing this to, actually is selected object also responding to the enemy? That's something that we need to have a look at, but let's just do this here for now. And before I continue, I just need to quickly check if our selected object also considers enemy to be a selected object. So let's start the wave and click on an enemy, pause the game real quick. Yeah, so it does. Okay, so we will have to, so this could actually give a problem. So let's just keep it like this, just to not have any issues. And then I'll just call this reference point one more time. And what we'll do is enemy selected tower dot transform dot position, and that's going to be equal to target dot transform dot position. Maybe we might have to move, maybe we'll have to create our own vector free, actually. Vector free adjusted position. So rather than doing that, we'll just do adjusted position is going to be equal to this. And I believe it's the dot y. We'll probably have to have it slightly higher, but let's test it for now. And see how it's going to look like. So let's start the wave, click here, and well, enemy selected display is not being, oh, that's right, we need to actually call it somewhere. And we're going to call it in update. Where is update? Right here. So right here we will do check for selected enemy, like so. And with this present, let's place a tower again. And now we see that we know exactly what our tower is looking at all time. And if we disable the tower, the circle disappears. Of course, our biggest problem, oh, we are actually getting an error, which is interesting. Let's have a look at the error that we're getting. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ah. So, of course, what we didn't do here is just an if selected object is not null. Actually, do we have anywhere in the code that checks if our selected object is not null? Let's see if this exists anywhere else in the code. No, there is nothing that goes in update, so there you go. So we'll just drag it here, and that should be the entire function that was requested done. Now, right now, the biggest problem is that when we actually click on the enemy, oh, there we go, we get another problem. And or selected object.tag is not enemy. I believe enemies have enemy tag. Yeah, so we were trying to get an object reference to this, but this obviously doesn't exist. An enemy will not have the tower component. There we go. And whoa, whoa, whoa. Of course. That's so annoying. Go away. And this just looks like a big exception. We can actually now get rid of this. No, we can't. But what we can do is we can shorten this down. So we will do tower selected tower is equal to this, and that way we don't have to get the component twice, we'll only have to get it once. There we go, like so. It saves a little bit of processing for us. Now with this done, let's press play, see how it works. It should work fine now. There we go. Let's actually press on an enemy first. Yeah, so when we click on them, it's all fine. When we click on it, we get the circle. Now let's fix this second issue that now we have, where the actual enemy circle doesn't pop up. So let's go into any random enemy and check if that circle even exists. What is the selection canvas? So selection and canvas is this circle here, okay, which every enemy should have. Oh, I know what the problem is. The problem is that the canvas has been disabled on all of them, but it shouldn't have been. So what really should happen is all I have to do is, I think, enable these canvases here, and the entire thing should work fine. I think that was done wrong during the, where are we? During the testing sequences of the project. And there we go. 3 more enemies to go through. Ah, this is so boring to do. There we go. Now with this done, let's give this a try one more time. So let's go back to the scene. Press play. Start the wave. Yeah, there we go. It works as it did before. And let's play the game for a little bit. Have a look at the FPS seems fine, even though we are not pulling the enemies. And that's something that we do want to change in the near future. What difficulty are we playing this game on? Yeah. Where are we? Save data. I kind of just want to set that to 012 by default. Yeah, I know that this is not used yet because it's fine. Now, what else could we add now that we're here? I quickly need to go through my to-do list. Since we still have some time, although I'll probably make this session shorter than usual. Okay, so what do we have here? Oh, the robot spikes. That sounds like a cool one. So display selected enemy, that's gone. Difficulty setting has been added as well, actually. So that's gone. The enemy health update. Sure, actually we can add it simply because it's not as taxing, because it's only gonna run for a specific period of time. So if we go into the dock information, our dock information has our basic panel, which is enabled for a display enemy. So, and what we have to do in order for it to do, wait, actually, did we comment this little piece of code that we've created? It takes it as a target and displays a circle around it, like so. So here we'll just add a update function at the, well, let's just add it right next to this. So what we'll do is we will check if our, where are we? If our basic panel is enabled. Actually, yeah, let's check if these conditions are, just this condition is true. So if, and change that slightly, dot active in hierarchy is equal to true, then that's when we know that we have this. And all we have to do is just call this set of information. Of course, enemy is not a value that we save. So let's create a private enemy is the enemy health that we need. Yep, enemy health. So this is enemy. And now we're going to get slight confusion with the values. So let's just do this and do enemy is equal to underscore enemy. Like so. But at the start, we will set our enemy to null. The reason why we do that is so it just clears out the previous one. Actually, no, there's no need. We will always be replacing with this function regardless. So now that we have this, all we have to do that is get rid of that, paste it here into, actually, we will create a new function, which is private void update enemy health. And we'll paste that in here instead. And here we'll call update enemy health, like so. And then update enemy health. Now, we can later move this out of update and put it in invoke, so it doesn't happen as often as every frame, but we will leave it as this for now. So we can remove this. And then when we're going to be optimizing, we are going to go through every single class regardless. So let's see how that works. We select our health of the enemy, and the health gets updated immediately. How about you target the lowest health target? Oh, one thing that I see that doesn't happen is when we left click, it doesn't clear the previous selection. So we can quickly fix that by disabling the range circle when we do our left click. So if we do our left click, we want to disable stuff at that point. So let's just do I believe disable docs is what we want to do. Disable docs, like so. Is disable docs called anywhere else in here? No. So on any mouse input, we can just safely disable it because we don't actually, yeah. Interesting. Well, does disable docs not call? No, it doesn't. That's fine. Interesting. So what does disable? The range circle. I guess let's check out where this gets disabled. On deselect highlights. Okay. So on deselect highlights is where we want to run this right before we do our if, like so. But we don't actually. Because if we click on because that will get actually quite annoying for the user. So no, we don't want to do that. We want to actually just manually do range display circle dot game object dot set active false. There we go, like so. Yeah, of course you're gonna give me a lot of errors. Okay, now, oh, interesting. So now, even though the highlight is enabled, it still disabled this highlight. So that is a problem. Yeah, with it being there. That's probably why I didn't put it there originally. So rather than it being here, we have to discern if our click has the highlights enabled. So if no, that's going to be me. Give me an error straight away. No, because I didn't save. That's fine. Okay, so now let's click on a tower, like on a highlight, and then go into manager. And what should we have here? So selection highlight is now not null. So we can just go into that piece of code, and if selection highlight is not null, if it is null, then we can safely run this code without any problems, because that means that we just want the circle disappear because we're not actually trying to place anything down. And let's try it now. So it doesn't disappear if we do that, which is fine. And when we click anywhere else, it doesn't do that. But we should actually disable the tower completely when we click somewhere else. So off the tower. So let's do that as well. What does disable docs do? Yeah, so disable docs is what we want to run on top of all of that. So we'll just do disable docs in the start. Now let's brace a tower, click on it, it's fine. When we unclick, it's also fine. Then we can right click. Yeah, that feels way more natural now than whatever it was like previously. Let's do some tests now that we have this. Actually, one thing I want to do is I feel like putting down the price of this tower. I know it just doesn't seem as good as the other towers, and I don't think it should be so much more expensive. So I'm gonna do the buyout cost to be lower, and I'll actually change the upgrade pricing down as well. To 25, 300. Yeah, let's keep it like that. That should be better. Make this tower slightly more viable, I hope. I will need to do some testing on that one. So we did this. Options panel need to be adjusted. No, that's not for stream. Possible issues placing towers on top of a tower system. We'll see. Okay, so road spikes. That's it. So the same way we place towers, we want to add a brand new thing, which is going to be road spikes. But that's going to be way different than placing a tower. Because when we place a tower, well, where are we? Placing a tower will, well, it's going to be similar but different to placing a tower, because placing a tower only allows us to place it on the ground, but we want to place our spikes on the ground. So first, let's make some spikes. So I'm going to create an empty game object, and we're going to call it road spikes, and just going to reset the position of this. Now inside of this, we'll add a 3D cube. Let's make it very small. Even smaller than this. Let's move this out of the way. So let's duplicate 1, 2, 3, and 5. With these there, let's go into, let's call them all a spike, because they're all, actually, rather than creating a road spike, we already have a spike-like icon. So let's go into bullets. Scriptable object, where are we? Resources, prefabs, bullets. And we have ourselves this spike that we've created here ages ago. So I'll just unpack this prefab. We'll remove this. All of the spikes inside can be, yeah, let's just do it like this, so it looks like a road spike. The box collider can be adjusted appropriately. And we have ourselves a very nice road spike. So let's see how it fares in terms of proportions by placing it onto our map. It's slightly too small. So let's click on our spike. Yeah, it's way too small. So let's make it bigger. 0.3. Yeah, it's good enough. So what we'll do is we'll have an option to place these all over the waypoints of the yellow areas. The reason why they're going to be on the yellow points is because we don't want them to take up too much space. As I mean, I don't want the player to be able to place too many because that would be too overpowered for the level, I believe. So let's start programming the spike placing. So for that, we need to first go and look into our left mouse script. So if our selected object to place is not null, which is what it's going to be, and we do our area check radius. So what we really need to do is have this area of code different. We, rather than doing this, let's add a new variable and do private game object. Nah, let's not. Let's not. Where was that piece of code? It was in where are we? Right here. So see, this code is actually very specific to a tower now. What does area check? Does area check compare against anything specific? No. It only checks for different objects. And it actually does use the tile block by default. So let's go back into our player. So we do actually have to change in this section of code. Now, let's see what selected object to place is by the tag. So I click on here, I pause. Game manager, what do we have here? We have to place is going to be gone. So that's going to be all towers. So we'll do selected and selected object to place dot tag is equal to tower. Because right now we know it's tower, and then so that means we're going to do that. But then else, this is where we're going to add a placement of spikes, and then here places the selected tower. So rather than checking area, we will check if our tile currently has a spike. 1 second. And we will do that by opening the tile script. And we will make a new public. And we will call this the place object. So the place object will be an object that we will place on that specific tile. Go away, go away, go away. And we can actually use this to reinforce our placement system. So placement of spikes. So we will do hit dot transform dot get component. Well, actually, first we want to instantiate our spikes, but rather than instantiating the spikes, we will pull them. No, let's instantiate and then pull it later. So we essentially can copy most of this code over. So what we have here, we have a vector free placement. We don't need the placement position vector, but what we can do is copy this section and place it here. And then rather than placement position, we'll just do mouse position. No, we will do mouse position. No, hit dot transform dot get component like so, and we'll get the tile component. And then dot. And here we will do here we will attach our object. Well, transform position is equal to what are we looking at? We're looking at the path point position. So this will place it at our path point, but what we also have to do is add it to the owned object. We will need a class for our spike as well, so we know that there is, so we can deattach it later. And the biggest problem we will have is the highlight system. Currently, I believe, how does the highlight system work? Because I think it will not let us highlight over a specific objects, but I guess we will have, and so we'll have to reverse that. So if we click on here, how does Highlight Manager work? Oh, so Highlight Manager itself doesn't actually handle checking, which is great. That means it's done somewhere in player interaction before we click. So let's have a look at that. Tower placement placers. Oh, I call things so bad. Oh, so is this one. So what we will have to do here is determine what kind of a selection we are performing, because there you go. And selection highlight dot tag is equal to tower. So we'll make sure that all of our selection highlights that are tower actually have the tower tag, which I think most of them already do. So let's just make sure all of them do 100%, like so. And then we're just going to add more code down here. Or rather than doing this in such a weird way, we can modify the area check instead. Let's have a look at the area check code. So it takes an object and actually let's pass through a tag string, and we're going to call it tag. So rather than doing this here, we'll just put tag instead. Yeah, that will be better because we will not write so much code. So what do we have here? And we're going to be passing the highlight dot tag. No, where are we? Selection highlight dot tag. There we go. With this, now the appropriate tag will show the appropriate coloring, which is great. And that gives us slightly more issues. This we will no longer, well, we don't need this for now. What we'll pass here is, of course, our highlight.tag. And the great thing that this does is, so let's now create let's create two instances of the spike. The first one is our spike that we're going to keep. The second one is going to be our highlight. So let's just do spike bullet placer and add the highlight script like we did with every other one. In tower range display, tower range, we don't need that for this. But let's find the good and bad material. So the good and the bad, let's find the good one more time, because we will need it to attach it to these 3 spikes in here. And of course, these 3 spikes have to be dragged in to the active section like so. Wait, spike, it's not a spike bullet, it's road spikes. Road spikes placer like so. Update this. Now with this, we can 0, 0 in its position, and we can add it to our little highlights place. Go into prefabs, placers, drag this one in, and then in game management, we are going to add our road spike to the total pool of highlighted towers. Of course, this also means that we need a brand new icon, and that's going to be the spike, road spike. Road spikes, of course, it's not going to be a tower selection. So let's change the name. Places road spikes to deal damage to enemies walking past. Like so. This will have to be changed. Although, let me think. Let's open this script. The spikes won't be interactable once we place them down, but can we use the spike to consider it a tower? Because we can then keep all of the code without having to change much. Yeah, let's do that. Let's consider this road spikes to be a tower. Road spikes in a sense. So road spikes, tower ID. I guess range tower was the last tower. No, the punch through was. So let's just give it the next of ID. We don't need a tier for it. Let's just give it some kind of a value here. And what this does is a description. It's also a necessary. That's great. Now that we have this, we can now place the spike tower. It's funny because it has the spike tower as well. So the tower to place is going to be our road spikes, which are in here. Oh, actually, it would be nice if it was enabled. Okay. Let's see if that's going to work. Where are we? Road spikes. No, not the punch through road spikes. Replace with the road spikes. Yep, should be fine. So now, if we go here, we click on this, we get a little error. Okay, so first thing we'll do is if range display is not null. So our range spikes don't actually use it, which means that it should be an optional variable rather than a necessary variable. And that also means we need to put this in to update. There we go. That should fix the problem for the highlight tower not working as intended. There you go. So with this, we do have one thing we didn't do is we didn't set the tag. Oh, that's right. What we were passing for the tower's tower was the tower tag, but it shouldn't be the tower tag. It was, what was the previous one before we added the tag? Whoa! It was a tile, right? Tile. Let's string tag. not tag, it's gonna be the ground. Now, that means that we need to pass through that specific ground. I'm gonna go for a quick pee break, and then we will sort this out. With the quick pee done, now, oh, I have a message. Okay, with this present, now let's go back to fixing this out. So first we need to figure out what do we have in common between the two functions that use area check. So if we type in area check, so this first one has the highlights, and the second one, I believe, also has the highlight. So the highlight is what has to pass through a tag. So which makes our life actually easier than I would have guessed. So let's make a private serializable string. So we'll call this private string, and that's going to be our the ground tag. And let's make it a tile by default. And I'll just right click here and do this. Now we will need to be able to get it, but we don't have to set it. So you can get rid of the set. Unique tag used for placing the object on that specific ground type. Now, what's great about this system is that we can actually now create towers that can be only placed on ground. Okay, so how is this going to work? We see here we have ground. So let's press play and see what tag the actual what tag everything is under on the map. So let's click on the map now. So the default blocks, where are we? Have a tile tag, whereas the path tags have path, and the black are untagged because we didn't specify that in code, which is fine. But what's important is that we know that our road spike has to be called path, like so. Let's update this prefab. And now that we have this information, we can go into area check and, well, not area check, into every instance where player check is called. And all we have to do is just do, actually, since we're only going to do it once, we'll do selection highlight selection highlight dot get component. We're going to get the high selection manager, and that's going to be the ground tag, like so. Let's copy this because our area happens in one more place, and replace it here. Let's check that there is no more. Nope. Where did we make ground tag? Like so. And with this now, if we try to play, everything should work like it did previously. So let's click. There we go. It works fine for our normal tower. And what happens if we pick our spike? Is the spike being enabled? Yes, it is, but for some reason that's about it. Um, okay, so we press play. Actually, oh, I feel like Game Manager is missing. Ah, I see what happened there. Believe I there we go. Now it should work fine. I was using the prefab. There we go. So now this can be placed on here, but it can't be placed on our ground. And of course, if we click here, it places the tower, which is not what we, of course, wanted it to do, but it's a step in the right direction. So let's see what happens when we do, so we click on this, and let's pause now. Right now, what information our game manager has. So the selected to place object is a multi-shooting tower, which is not true. And why would it say that? Well, let's check out our road spikes. What do the road spikes say? Well, that's because it's what we had dragged in there. So let's change that to our road spikes. And now let's click on them. When we click, it doesn't instantiate them. Why does it not instantiate them? Well, that is probably because if we go into our instantiation part, which is here. So I believe this section of the code will have to change. Actually, no, it should place it properly regardless, if I'm correct. I guess I'll have to do a little bit of debugging. So what do we have here? If input those mouse, if selected is not null. Oh, that's right. We didn't remove the other tower check, which was wrong. There you go. So now we can place these guys around however we want. We, of course, seem to be getting some kind of an error. So let's just double check that it's from this. Yes, it is. So it is from this scene. Um, so that's because our selected object to place doesn't have a tower script, but that's actually fine because our spike will not have a tower script. So what we'll do here, if selected object to place a dot component, the tower is not null. Only then we will do this, and then else we will check for a new component for a spike that we will create now, the new class. We could just give it the class of tower, but the spike will be so limited in functionality, and there's so much actual functions we don't want the spike to have that I don't think there is a point. Let's just move this higher. Did I remove the wrong spike by mistake? I don't think so. Prefabs. Or would you be disabled by default? Yeah, no, the spike, well, it's not spike bullet anymore. It's a road spike. So let's go into our scripts. we'll go into towers because it's like kind of goes into it. So this is going to be the road spike. Now let's open up the script, go into our towers, and then attach road spike. And then now that we have this, let's get rid of these guys. Now let's go in here and we'll do let's have our private base tower spike. Serialize field. Make this public like this, and then if we get rid of that, get rid of that, get rid of that, and open this, we shall do the following like so. And then instead of tower, we will do spike, road spike, and this is going to be called a spike and buyout cost, like so. And that will complete the entire process of placing the spike. Of course, spikes need to check for the enemy and they need to do some form of damage. So let's just do a simple on trigger enter if other.gameObject.tag is equal to enemy. Then what we'll simply do is other.getComponent enemy health dot damage take damage, and we will pass our spike dot damage. Actually, since let's open up our spike scriptable. Where are we? We'll add one tier to this. We'll set the damage to something like 10, and we'll do spike dot tier 0 dot damage, like so. And with this, our spike now does damage to the enemy when they walk into it. And then, if we want, we should just disable this object. So then we'll do this dot game object dot set active false. Later on, we're going to pull it. This is why I'm disabling it instead of destroying it. Now, let's give this a try, because with this, our entire spike system is complete. So what this does is it placed spikes on road damage enemy who steps on it but get destroyed in the process. We have the reference to the object that stores a damage of the spike called on collision enter between the enemy and the spike object. Okay, with this done, let's click on let's go into our towers, road spike, attach this by finding the road spike. It's on trigger, which means it's set properly. Do our enemies have rigid bodies? That's the next question, because if not, yes, they do. Because if they didn't, we would have to attach it to the spike. So now let's. Oh, it's actually possible to drag without holding this. Actually, something I want to change in that case real quick. I only want navigation to happen if we select scroll bar. Weird. Okay, that's for another time because an hour is almost up. So let's go here and place a spike, click on an enemy and see how that's going to work. Boom. So it works as expected. So we can use the spikes to eliminate all of our enemies off the map. There you go. Great. And with this, we have a very simple mechanic where we create little spikes that prevent the enemies from getting in our way. Now, actually, let's just double check that we can't place a spike on top of a spike, because if not, that's going to be a little bit of a bug. Oh, interesting. Is this with every object or with just that one specific tower? Okay, so this tower needs some work. I think I know what the problem is. Yeah, they can't overlap, which is great. But yeah, the radio tower doesn't work anyway. But actually, what the problem is, so if I go into the radio tower, where are we? Ranged boost tower, and we open this prefab. The problem is that there must be a box collider somewhere. There you go. Yeah, there is a box collider on the. There you go. That's it. That's fixed. But yeah, this is it for now. I'm gonna take a little break, and I'll be back to do our very first part of our other game that we will be working on besides this one. Although the other one will only have streams once a week instead of continuous streams every day like this one. But then again, this one's almost finished. I'm estimating that there's 1 week left till this series is complete, and the other week should take anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks because it's short.